Welcome to First Responder Financial Freedom Podcast. We talk to first responders all over the nation who are investing and working on businesses outside their first responder jobs. Our goal is to motivate and educate each other and help provide a better financial understanding for a better future. Now here are your hosts, Mike Webb, Tyler Thrush, and Aaron Foster.
All right, everybody, welcome back to First Responder Financial Freedom. You have Mike, myself, and our guest today, Brian Waters. Brian Waters works for LA County Fire Department as a captain. He is a real estate investor. He also owns an e-bike business, and we're excited just to dive into what his current businesses look like and hopefully provide some value. So with that, Brian, thanks for hopping on the show. Why don't you give us a real quick background, and then we can just go from there.
Yeah, you bet. Hey, first off, Tyler and Mike, thank you guys so much for having me on. I've been listening to you guys for a long time, and this community you guys put together is absolutely amazing. So I'm very, very honored to be on here with you guys, and I appreciate that. So again, I'm Brian Waters. I live in Huntington Beach, and I'm a fire captain for LA County Fire Department. And I've been investing in real estate for quite a bit, and I look forward to talking about that and talking a little bit about some of that stuff I've been doing outside of the fire department as well. One more thing.
What's the e-bike business? Don't skip over that.
Yeah. So, gosh, Huntington Beach is, I know Tyler knows the area, but we live about 2 miles from the beach. And I mean, there's miles and miles of trails. It's absolutely beautiful. But e-bikes became super popular, about 5 years ago. And so when that started happening, I saw an opportunity to get some. And it actually started, funny enough, at the fire station, sitting around the table. And I was going to buy a couple bikes from overseas. And I previously had an Amazon business so I knew logistics. I knew how to do shipping and customs and all that type of stuff. So I reached out to a supplier and found a company. And then I talked to the guys at the table, said, hey, I'm ordering a pallet. Who wants them? Literally, that pallet came and they were gone instantly, it's kind of the beauty of the fire department. Guys want good deals, but they also, they want to be supportive of what you're doing too. So I ordered another pallet that was gone. And I'm like, man, there's something to this.
How many are on a pallet?
So I ended up, what's that?
How many bikes are on a pallet?
There's 10. Okay. So I wanted to make sure the quality control.
And we're talking like mountain bikes, not like those Lime scooters you see or bird scooters see. Yeah. Like that's a pedal bike type thing, right?
Yeah, they're actually beach cruisers just because we live so close to the beach. So that's what we got. But so I was like, man, there's something to this. So I ended up just starting a business. And, we can get into this a little bit later, but we're on the tail end of shutting that down. And I don't know if it's a good time to talk about that right now, but we'll talk. I can go into it too, but
yeah, for sure. And this really, is why I brought that business up. And I saw the other day you posted that you're going to shut it down. But for me, it's like we all love talking about real estate, but a lot of times people have to start and build their capital up before they hop into that. And I've seen your business, and I'm like, oh, that's pretty interesting. Obviously, entry cost is a lot lower, things like that, and you're still making good money. So if you don't mind, kind of now as the business sits, or over the last few years, like how many bikes would you think that you sold a year, things like that, just to kind of give like a brief overview of what that looks like.
Yeah, no problem. So I'll back up a little bit. When I originally got promoted to engineer, I was at a super slow station, 74s. Tyler, I'm sure you're familiar with that. They call it the Sleepy Hollow. It's literally like we would go 8 shifts without a call. It is crazy. So during that time, I was looking for a side hustle, and I started an Amazon business, funny enough. And the crazy part is I sold bakery boxes. I've never baked in my life. But what that did is I learned how to run a business. I learned the logistics and all that stuff. And it was a stepping stone. I literally would get made fun of every day. I made fun of myself. I'm like, this is ridiculous. But the joke was kind of on everyone else and myself, because COVID hit. And guess what? Every mom in the United States wanted to have her own bakery. There was drive-by birthday parties. That year, I made more selling bakery boxes than I made as an engineer for the fire department. It was nuts. So I took that capital and I parlayed it into a bigger thing, which is bikes. So instead of selling thousands of bakery boxes, I would have to sell one bike for the same amount of profit. So yeah, we did the e-bike business for about 3 years. And the problem around here is it kind of became a race to the bottom. A lot of companies started popping up, and then they would lower their prices. And then the huge kicker was insurance. Insurance tripled in 1 year because you have to have liability insurance. So I guess the point is all this stuff that I've been doing has been kind of a building block to get into the real estate, which we'll eventually get into. But probably the main reason I'm closing down is probably like both of you guys. Like, we got into the side hustles to do what? It's to spend more time with your family, right? Spend less time at the fire station doing other things. But the kicker is that I finally realized is having a successful bike company was a blessing and a curse, because all it made me do was spend more time at the shop and less time for my family. So I went from my plan was to get more time with my twin boys and my wife, but I was at the shop every day off. So it was a lot of work. And it was a kind of a one-man show, and I was able to make a good profit, but it finally like had a heart-to-heart with my wife. And I was like, you know what? The original plan was to be with each other and spend more time, and I'm not doing that.
When you say shop, what kind of shop were you operating out of?
I actually had a retail shop, like
okay.
a storefront. Yeah.
All right. I just was curious because I've been listening to and reading about some of these contractor flex spaces, because I have a storage facility that has like stuff set up well for the folks that have like an e-commerce type business and just need like a place to store all these pallets of bikes. So I was just curious if you were operating out of something like that, but if it's an actual retail storefront, that's a different ballgame.
Yeah, no, but there is a friend of mine who does that. He's a contractor, and he actually bought a bunch of my bikes to sell out of his storefront, and he does rentals now. So he's kind of double dipping in a way. But so it's a little bittersweet, and like people reached out and they're like, man, I'm so sorry about your company, but it's actually a good thing. Like, I'm getting all that capital back to now get into doing what I really, really like. Like, I wouldn't say I really enjoyed wrenching on bikes too much. It's a lot of work. And then the problem is you have to take that capital and reinvest it in inventory. So it's a revolving door of you're getting a lot of money, but sending a lot of money out.
It's like flipping.
Yeah, it's like flipping. So yeah, exactly. No, you're 100% right. But I learned a ton. I learned how to pay the kids and set up taxes correctly and run a business, and that's worth millions of dollars to me. So yesterday I put a post out. Tyler saw it. I literally wiped out my whole inventory in one day, and a lot of them was retirees and firemen and police, all the guys that are probably listening to this. So grateful for that, for sure.
So do you ship them, or is it all local? Like they pick up at your retail location? Because I imagine shipping these would be expensive.
I would do both, but surprisingly enough, shipping's not expensive. But the hard part is they have to assemble the bike, and so I put out some YouTube videos on how to do that, and I prefer not to, because people just want to pick them up. So I would deliver them to their house. But yeah, that chapter is behind us. It was awesome. I loved it. It's cool when you're out and about down at the pier and you see one of your bikes ride by. You're like, oh, that's my bike. That's cool.
Nice wheels, bro.
Yeah, so, exactly.
Before we skip ahead to like how that parlayed into real estate investing, you just mentioned something about paying your kids and things of those nature, setting up your entity. Can you just touch on that? Like, were you set up as a LLC? How were you paying your kids? Was it through a Breckendale, or was it through, or Coverdale, not Cover? Breckendale's a street in my first due. Coverdale program. Or what did that look like? How were you paying them? Because I would imagine at least some, not all, but some of the folks listening to this are in that boat where they have a side hustle, if you will, and they may also have kids. How are they able to legally pay them a little bit? Because I think it's like 18 grand or something.
Yeah. So this has been one of my favorite things I've learned literally in the past couple of years, but I ended up I had a tax guy for a while that he just wasn't that good. I would call him and he'd ask questions. And so I finally interviewed a bunch of tax people, and this guy I mean, he owns 50 real estate rentals on his own. He specializes in small business and in real estate stuff. And I mean, you guys know how important that is. And as first responders, fire, police, CHP, all the people that are on this this podcast listening, like we make a pretty decent living. Obviously, we get taxed a lot, right? And so my biggest thing is I hate when people complain about the taxes. I mean, it sucks, right? We hate them. I hate them. But guess what? You have to outsmart the IRS and do things legally, 100% legally. So I'm super conservative when I do it. But to answer your question, what we did is I set up an S corp for the e-bike business, and then we set up a family LLC, and then we set up below that the tree goes down, and we set up joint accounts with my boys. I have two twins, Leighton and Pierce, that are 10, and since I'm joint owner on their account, what we'd do is I would take a certain amount of money from my e-bike business. It would go over to the family LLC. And then from there, just directly per month, it would go into their accounts. And the cool part about that is I could take that money and do whatever I want with it. I could pay for their jiu-jitsu. I could pay for their soccer cleats, whatever. But because it's $18,500 that we stay under that threshold, they don't have to report that. And so that's a pretty significant chunk that you can just move the pile somewhere else and benefit from the tax advantages of that, which was great. And this year blew me away. We got our taxes back about 2 weeks ago, and I was like, wow, that strategy worked pretty well. So
nice. Yeah, that's something I'm not taking advantage of, but I should. I have a 12-year-old, and it's like, man, I take him down to the one storage facility and make him pick up trash and spray for weeds and stuff. But it's like I should be doing something there, and I'm not. So
yeah, and the other thing too that we did was we have a template for an employment contract between them and my business, and so I would co-sign because I'm their guardian, and I'm happy to share that with anyone. It's really good and we keep a really nice, tight, clean binder for everything for our business. So one's a social media manager, and the other was he did like janitorial stuff. And in the eyes of the IRS, it just has to be any job. Like you'd pay a social media manager, what, $40,000? I'm paying him $18,500.
Yeah,
they don't care who it is.
I was paying almost $1,000 a month to the one that was helping me. Across, it was like eight, I don't know, something like that. But yeah, definitely. And I've heard people say like, use your kids in photos of advertisements because then it's marketing and stuff like that. So, that's pretty cool. So, you were LLC elected as an S corp. We're actually going to have an episode coming up very soon about with a financial planner who's a fireman in Indianapolis. So we'll probably dive into this topic a little bit harder. I was just curious because you mentioned it, like what you were doing. So let's kind of transition into, you started the e-bike business kind of as sitting around the kitchen table. That evolved into a business that you're now sunsetting and moving, I guess, full bore into real estate investing. So can you talk a little bit about like how long have you been investing? What type of investing? I know a lot of the California guys typically buy remotely and have rentals outside of the California market. So maybe just kind of talk to us about how that journey looked getting into investing.
Yeah, no problem. I mean, you kind of hit it on the head. It's super expensive in California, especially Southern California. And I kind of became an accidental investor, and I'm sure most of us did. And a lot of the guys I ask around the kitchen table, if they own their own home, like they don't even realize that they're investors just in that sense. And so I ended up getting my primary residence by knocking on a door. Like I literally went down a neighborhood that I really liked and knocked on the door. And I didn't even know that like what wholesaling was or driving for dollars, all that stuff. I knew nothing about real estate other than I'm like, this is cool. This is a cool neighborhood. This house looks crappy. I'm going to see if she'll sell it to me. Knocked on the door. She answered and she was like, yeah, actually, I'm thinking about selling it. And I was like, okay, oh crap. Like now what? I don't even know if I have enough money to buy this place. So we ended up buying it. We rented it back to her sight unseen for a year. Turns out when we went in the first time, we were like, oh crap, this is a total hoarder house. in Huntington Beach. So, but it's beautiful neighborhood, everything. So ended up moving into that house. And then again, I didn't know what house hacking was, but at that point I was with my wife, Yvonne, and we just couldn't afford the mortgage. I was working a different job. I wasn't in the fire service yet. And I was actually a pilot for the airlines. And so I was surprisingly making very little money, but I was gone a lot. And so we decided to move 2 of our friends in. And for almost 10 years, they helped us pay the expensive mortgage until I started to get more money. And literally right before we had our twins, they moved out. So it was kind of like one of those accidental things. I didn't know what wholesaling was. I didn't know what driving for dollars were. I didn't know what house hacking was. And I just did it because out of necessity.
Yeah, you just take action and you figure it out.
Yeah.
Like that's
just, yeah, you're just like, oh, there's a name to this.
That's what I would say. I think a lot of first responders that I talk to about this kind of stuff that are not yet in business, I think they really doubt some of the resourcefulness that they're capable of. And it's like, that's one of the components of our jobs that kind of you do it without maybe even realizing it. Like you're always kind of like making a solution out of not all the information that you need or like a shit situation. Like you're figuring it out. Oh, look, it did the thumbs up. So I don't know why it does that. Fireworks. I got balloons the one time, but anyway,
I love that.
So it's like,
apparently you were making a good point.
It's easy to be like, see, well, that guy, it all worked out for him. But yeah, like you didn't know it was going to work out. You just took the first step, and then it's kind of like you just figured it out as you kept walking. Mm-hmm. So I think that's a skill that a lot of people don't pay enough attention to, or a trait, I should say, that they pay enough attention to. That seems to be fairly prevalent in this line of work. So that's pretty cool, man.
Yeah. And then moving forward from that, we had our kids, and luckily in Southern California, homes appreciate very nicely. And so what happened was when the rates dropped, we ended up refinancing. We had a ton of equity just based off of time of being in the house. And we're able to refinance for a 2.625 and pull a ton of cash out. And so we're still sitting on that mortgage, which is amazing. That was just timing more than anything. But we were able to take that capital, and that capital helped me do the Amazon thing. It helped me do the e-bike thing. But we ended up getting, in 2019, we kind of intertwined another set of firefighters. We had a firefighter realtor, and a guy who was during COVID wanted to sell his house in Marietta. And what we did with that is home prices there. You guys remember home prices were going like 20 offers, crazy, $100,000 over asking. But what his situation was is he needed to rent back because he wasn't ready to retire yet. He had a kid that was a freshman in high school in Marietta, California. So he wanted to have someone rent it back, but there was no one. All the people that were trying to buy his house didn't want to do that because they wanted to move there. Sure. So I was like, this is perfect. So I had a firefighter realtor, and I bought it off a fireman and rented it back to him. And 2 years into it, he decided to move he retired early. But at that point I bumped the rent up because I was way under. I bumped it up $1,000. And then I was like, man, I'm killing this real estate stuff, And then when I kind of took a screeching halt, because I was like, wow, most of my capital is gone. So now what do I do? And that's when I started looking out of state. And fast forward today, we have a total of 11 properties, and a chunk of the majority of those are all out of state. From Tennessee to Alabama, Georgia, Missouri, and we're actually starting to do some stuff in Detroit too. But like we couldn't afford any more in California, and so we went out of state, and it has literally changed our lives, man. It's awesome. So
nice. So you kind of just hit a lot of different places from Detroit to Georgia, but how did you go about, or if somebody was in your situation where it's like, hey, maybe they got 15, 20 years in wherever they're working, they're doing okay, but they don't think they can invest in their own backyard because they're in a market similar to where you guys are. How would they go about vetting somebody, or how did you go about finding these houses that make sense and cash flow so that you know with confidence you're buying something that's actually what you think it is? And then how do you manage that?
Yeah. So the first thing that we did was we actually joined Mastermind. And that's one reason why I'm super happy that you guys are putting this together, because
I don't know if it's mine or Tyler's.
I could hear you. I could see you guys. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, I can now.
Yeah.
I don't know what happened there.
Okay, cool.
Pop the clutch.
Yeah. So what I was saying is, I ended up joining a mastermind, and I was just talking about how important that is. And like, that's why I'm super grateful that you guys have put together this community, because I didn't know, I had no idea. And it was like super scary. The more I thought about it, I was like, man, I know nothing about these markets. I haven't even been to them. But what I did know is I'm pretty decent at connecting with people. And so what I did is I went into our mastermind and really started asking the questions and being the person that was really involved. And from there, there was certain people that had 20 properties in Memphis. And I'm just thinking to myself, well, if this guy has 20 properties there, he obviously knows something about the market. So I kind of just rode the coattails of some of the more seasoned investors. And then from there, I did my own due diligence. The first couple ones we did were turnkey. And so I would interview the turnkey provider. Luckily with technology these days, it's so easy. I mean, you can literally do a virtual walkthrough of a house just like you're there. And I just really took a leap of faith on a couple of them. I made sure that I had good property managers, because I don't want to manage it. A lot of people do. That's not my thing. I think a lot of it comes down to, have you guys read Who Not How from
Gino Wickman? No, Ben Hardy.
It's Ben Hardy.
Dan Sullivan.
Dan
right?
Sullivan.
Yeah, Dan Sullivan and Ben Hardy. Yeah, that's a
that
good
book.
one.
Yeah, that book like literally changed the game for me, because what I realized was there's a lot I don't know, but there's a lot of people that do know a lot of stuff that are really good at it. Like Tyler is legit at the mortgage stuff. I don't know anything about it. So I was able to find a bunch of my who's to figure out the how to do it. And so, hopefully that answers your question. But I think the one mistake that I'll share with people, because I think that sometimes mistakes are more important, is I went into too many markets. Like when I was reading that list to you guys, I was like, oh wow, like, and it's still manageable, but it's a lot harder. So I would say find your niche and really just dig in that area. And if it's successful, don't change it. And so that's kind of how I did that. So the first couple were turnkeys, and I've now progressed a little bit further into doing some like BRRRR stuff and whatnot. But I think
So just so people know, turnkey, basically what Brian's referring to is there's providers that are in markets like he's mentioned that handle the acquisition, the rehab, sometimes even tenant placement and property management, to where you say, hey, I want to be in this market, and then everything is done for you up until a certain point. It could be all the way through property management, it could be through completion, and then once it's completed, the property is now his, and then he's either going to manage it himself or he's going to find a property manager. So you have that side, and then you have what I guess he's talking about now, which is more like what Mike and I do, is you handle acquisitions all the way through the construction process, in either disposition as a sale, converting it into a rental, or selling it as a flip. So both good strategies, and I think turnkeys are definitely good as you're getting started, because you're basically paying for somebody else's experience and expertise to kind of see how the process goes without having to make a lot of those mistakes yourself. Now, you're not going to perhaps make it as much profit as something like if you're taking it the whole way through, but you also have to kind of understand, like Brian said, what is your skill set? And if it's not there yet, why not lean on somebody else's expertise until you have a better understanding, and then you can take more control of the process.
Yeah, I agree. And we've all heard the term, it's firefighter proof. I think it's kind of a joke towards us because we need that sometimes. But turnkey is just that. Literally 3 of the ones I bought had a tenant in place. And so the cool part about that is they literally handed a golden platter to you and said, this is the amount of rent you're going to get. This is the amount of the insurance is going to be. This is the amount of property taxes. You hand them money and they run everything. It's the most no-brainer situation you can do. Obviously, stuff could pop up along the way. And I really encourage you to do your due diligence. But that first one, the second one, those are learning lessons. And as you do it, you're going to get better and really understand the process to then go out on your own and start doing the stuff where you can make more money. So, I think that's super important for everyone just starting off. And that's what I encourage people to do. I don't encourage someone to do a flip on their number one or two. Definitely not. That's scary to me. So
have you had any problems with any of the turnkeys? Because just in full disclosure, I've never bought a turnkey property like as you are describing. I've heard that they will go through and do, in essence, the lipstick on a pig type remodel. And from the pictures and video, it looks okay, but in person, it's not nearly as nice as you maybe were led to believe. And then you start getting hit with a bunch of maintenance fees that, coincidentally, they're also the maintenance provider, the property manager. So they kind of like pass the buck off to you and then kind of milk you dry that way. Have you had any issues with that? Did you order a separate property inspection? Were they able to be financed with traditional financing? How did that look?
Yeah. So, I mean, there are definitely companies out there like that, but I, and I could share within the Facebook group, the companies I use. I have no problem. I think part of the reason I'm on here is to connect with people and to provide some value. So I'd love to do that. But in my interview process with them, I talked a lot about that stuff. And so far, the ones I've used, they do brand new LVP flooring, the new kitchens, the roof has to be 10 years or less, water heater, the big ticket, the big maintenance items have to be under 10 years. And then they provide you with an inspection report, but I always get a third party inspection report. And what I've found is, they want to have a good business relationship with you. So they want to provide a good product. And if they do, you're going to come back to them. They don't want 1,000 investors. They want 100 that are going to buy 1,000 properties.
Sure.
And so, so I've had a great experience. Everything is, occasionally stuff comes up. Like I got a call actually this morning. Like I needed to put some Freon in the AC. That's just part of the game.
Yeah. I don't care whether you buy turnkey, you run it yourself. I'm dealing with 2 AC issues at 2 properties of my own right now. So it's like, if you get into this business and you think you're not going to have issues to figure out, well, then you're sorely mistaken. But what typically does the acquisition price versus the rent price look like? Like Tyler said, obviously, because this is more like a concierge served up for you type service, you might only be getting a 10 or 15% discount from market value. Whereas if you're acquiring it, you're fixing it up, you're going to have more meat on the bone, so to speak, than if you buy it from one of these turnkey providers. I would imagine most of them, though, they probably are at 1% rent to purchase price ratio or something along those lines. But maybe you could just give us an idea of like a recent example.
Yeah, you bet. So every single one that I'm doing are cash flowing. It might not be a lot, but this is not a get rich quick scheme. And I'm sure most of us know that. This is it's like watching grass grow over a long period of time. So I'm comfortable with not hitting home runs, just a lot of base hits to get me to where I want. And so, so you can get traditional financing. I'm using all my Fannie Freddies and then going to start using my wife's for these. So that's not a problem. The cool part that I talked about is you could run your numbers so you know exactly if you're going to be cash flowing or not. I always include, personally, just for my own calculations, I include 5% for maintenance, short-term maintenance, 5% for vacancies, 5% for long-term maintenance. You have to include the property management percentage, which most of those are 9 or 10. A couple of them I was able to negotiate for no property management fees. But I know business, so I think they probably incorporated somewhere in the price point.
I was going to say, how do you get the no management fee?
There was they just had too much inventory at one point, and so they were running a little special on that. But I'm like, I know business. I'm pretty sure they just bump up the fee. But the cool part is these don't go to the MLS. Yeah. What you see is what you get. There's you get on these turnkey lists, and then they just say you want it or not. You have to be able to analyze it within probably half an hour.
Really?
Because there's a bunch of investors that want it. And so you gotta you got to know your area codes, you know your streets, and you got to know your numbers,
Sure.
and you got to take action.
That's whether you're buying locally or long distance, in my opinion. But I was just curious because I've never heard 0% management. Like right now, I pay 8%, and I've always thought like, hey, if they want 10% and they earn it, great. Like the difference between 8% management and 10%, I want them to show my property. I want them to answer the phone when they call, and to me, like trying to find the cheapest property manager is kind of like trying to get the best price on a vasectomy. There's some things you just want to pay for, dude. You know, like there's some things it's like, let's spend a couple extra bucks. And my thought is like, if the property manager is like more invested and they want 10%, great. I'm happy to pay it. But the folks I'm working with now, that's just their rate. Whenever I went with them, it was 8%. So, and a lot of them will take half of the first month's rent or the first month's rent. I mean, sometimes it's like, bro, by the time you have the vacancy, 1 month is 8%. They want half of the first month's rent. Then they want 8 or 10% a month. I'm like, this thing's got to go rented with no maintenance issues for the next 16 months just for me to get back to like where I'm needing to be here, you know? So it's very important. Like you said, know those numbers. How have you been doing it long enough to see if what you are budgeting, like you said, 5% for maintenance, 5% for CapEx, have you done it long enough to say like, hey, what I budget is actuals versus like, you know, hey, actually I'm spending more like 11% on CapEx or whatever the case is?
Yeah. I mean, it's pretty close. Obviously it's an estimate. You just never know what stuff is going to happen. But the cool part that I've realized is as I scale, it becomes easier because now, you know, you have the 10 properties that can, if one thing's having a bigger ticket item, well, now I have 10 properties that I could pull from. So you don't feel the pain, you know, like I don't actually have to go to work to make that money to pay it. Thank you for my tenants that are paying rent, and there's other places that I can kind of move it around. So you become the master puppeteer, like kind of moving the money. So it's close, but I've been pretty lucky, knock on wood, because of the due diligence of the inspection reports, and they use somewhat quality rentable material. It probably wouldn't fly like in some parts of California, but for the Midwest, they use nice stuff. It's durable material.
Yeah.
They all use the same color paint, the same LVP flooring, the same faucets. It's super cookie cutter, which makes it lower cost for them. And it's just part of the game. Like you mentioned it, you have a car, you have to do maintenance on it.
Yeah.
I know that. I'm
look
not
how much we check apparatus and maintain and wax and we still have maintenance issues. So
yeah, we just had a fire engine burn a whole station down because of that. So it's
weird.
It's part of
Tyler,
the game.
Where were you?
That's what. Hey, that was my station, but I was not there.
That's crazy, man. Like PG had one of those a couple, like probably 2 years ago. Same thing. It was like, hey, this wasn't just a little fire. This was like a straight ripping fire while everybody was in the firehouse.
Yeah, I hope it's a wake up call for not the guys, but for the department out there to make sure that, you know, they're getting safe stuff for us. But yeah, it just, all that stuff's part of the game. And I know it bothers a lot of people, but if you get it in your mind that this stuff, it's not if, it's when it will come up. And if you're prepared mentally and you also are prepared financially, which I think having reserves is super, super, super important to weather the storm. Because the analogy is like, there's only two ways to get kicked out of real estate. You either quit or like you can't financially do it. And so one is your choice, and the other is you just have to be smart enough to put reserves in a way that way you could weather storms, you know. And if you do, over the long term, those base hits are going to turn into runs, and you're going to be great. And I don't personally do this just for the cash flow, because I think I'm blessed enough as a firefighter to make a good W-2 income. But you know, all the other benefits that everyone knows about, the appreciation, the taxes, and the principal pay down, that's where the money makers are at for me. So.
Well, and it's like we were talking about too. It's like you're saving money on property management. I know a good example is people always want to put carpet in rentals because it's cheaper than the LVP. But rest assured, you're going to be replacing that carpet frequently enough to where you might as well just put something in that's a lot more durable and it's going to outlast any tenant. And then it's you're always going to pay for those things. And then two, you mentioned something that and I like to use other people's experience to check what I'm thinking, right? So you mentioned you get an additional third-party inspection, right? But what a lot of people don't talk about is reserves. And I look at it this way. The underwriter or lender is always going to be way more conservative than almost any investor. So if you look at what lenders are currently requiring for reserves, probably because they have a lot of people dedicated to, if they have to take this property back, how long is it going to take them to get rid of it and restabilize it? So most of them want, like, so I'm refining a couple rentals that I have right now that I own free and clear, and they want 6 months on each property
in
that
reserves?
I own. So, hey,
Dang.
yeah, in reserves. So ding, ding, ding. I know, and that's a lot. It's a lot, but think about it. Their worst case scenario, right? They're bean counters. They're not like us. They're not taking chances. So I go, if I have 6 months, then I should be more than golden. And reserves are super important. And what happens is people get excited buying real estate. They buy a bunch of rentals in 1 year, and then they don't have any capital left. And then maybe that water heater takes them out, or the flooring takes them out, right? Yeah. And so I think it's a good thing to bring up. Use other people's experience when you're paying for these things, when you're doing a loan, and as opposed to getting frustrated. Remember, these people are ultra conservative, where we is not. So if we can go in the middle, it's usually a good way to do it.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, we in the fire service, I keep using analogies from there, but like you would never go into a structure fire without some type of plan B. Like you have your train, you train, you have your RIC team, you have contingencies in place for that reason. And so I think one thing that I've really learned in the fire service is how much everything we do there is super relatable to like the business world. If you think of it in a business sense, there's so many connecting the dots of those two worlds that I don't even think a lot of us as firefighters understand.
Yeah, I don't think you even realize it till you start to have your own business or it's illustrated for you.
Yeah.
And I felt like when I read Extreme Ownership, that book did a really good job, paralleling like military to private enterprise. But I saw a lot of the same like overlap within first responder community and business. If you really think about it, it's very, very similar.
Yeah. Do you guys, like, Tyler, when we say this a lot at county, I don't know if you guys, Mike, if you guys say that out where you are, but we say train like your life depends on it, because it does. Is that something you guys talk about?
Yeah, it's basically the same thing, but just maybe said a little bit differently. But we have a sign at our academy says that. Yeah.
So like one mantra that I'm trying to get a lot of these younger guys to go by is invest like your life depends on it, because it does. Like we train hard, we eat healthy, we go to the gym, we do hose lays with other crews, and all that stuff that we do is so we can be safe and be better to go serve the people that we're serving. But one thing we don't do is we don't take charge of our own financial IQ and our life. I don't know why. It's just something that never happens. The first day of the tower, they came to us with this packet and sign up for all this stuff. And 10 years later, no one even knows what it is. And so, I don't quite get it. And I'm kind of on a personal mission to change that.
And that's why, this group kind of was started for a lot of those reasons you just mentioned, was because I've been assigned to training, and I can't tell you how many recruits I've seen come and go that they slap that paperwork in front of them and you don't care. It's day 1, day 2 of the fire academy. You're just signing, filling stuff out. And then you realize, like, for the last 9 years, you haven't contributed to your 457, or you haven't done this, or you didn't do that. And it's just like, and I get it, because I was that, 20-some-year-old kid. Fortunately, I got a hold of it relatively soon. But, I've seen guys like get to the point where they have to retire, and it's like, they don't even have enough money to bridge the gap between now and when they're going to collect their first pension check without, doing this, that, or the other thing. And I'm just like, man, how unfortunate that is, because there's no shortage of information out there. I just think it's trying to distill it down into like digestible chunks, because I think it's very easy you're hearing about this IRA and 18,500 and this Coverdell, and you just get overwhelmed, and then they just shut down and say, screw it, I'll just work this good job and I'll get taken care of when I retire. And I don't think that's necessarily the truth, and I wouldn't necessarily subscribe to that.
Yeah, that one one thing that I talk about with a lot of these younger guys, and it's a question that I was asked, and so it kind of humbled me, and that's what really kind of launched me into this. But with the 457, a lot of guys will come to me, and girls, they'll be like, "Hey, dude, you're buying properties out of state and you've never even been there. Like, that's super risky." And so I have this conversation. I don't mean to be mean to them, it's a fun conversation. But I ask them this question. I say, "Hey, you invest in a deferred comp, right?" And they say, "Yeah." I go, "Oh, what fund?" And they go, "I don't know." And I go, "Oh," they go, "Oh, it's a target 45." And I go, "What does that mean?" And they go, "I don't know." I go, "What funds are in the target 45? How much did you make last quarter? How much did you make over the past 10 years?" They don't know any of that. And so my response to them, and this again is reflection back on this was asked to me, is I go, "You think it's risky that I invest out of state where I know every single penny down to the dollar how much I'm making, but you don't even know the name of the fund that you dump money into every single month, nor do you know what it is over the past 10 years?" And it's because we put our trust in these in other people. And I'm type A lot of firefighters are. I want to be in charge. I want to know what I'm doing. And it's worked so far, but I love that conversation. And it's an eye opener to everyone. They go, "Oh, wow, I don't know what I'm investing in." So they'll go back and look at it and they're like, "Man, this is not performing that well." And then I say, "Hey, by the way, do you know what the word deferred means? It means you will pay tax on it. It's just a matter of when." So anyway,
yeah,
for what it's worth, I love that conversation.
People always would say, and I guess maybe now they still say it, but I'm not sensitive to it. It's like, "Oh, investing in real estate's so risky, blah, blah, blah." And I'm a true believer that the riskiest thing you can do is have one source of income. And if your sole source of income and only source of income is your W-2, with a change of administration, a referendum, whatever, I was on the chopping block whenever like 2010 rolled around and they were going to lay off like almost 100 firefighters. And I was in that group. So I remember what that was like. So now I'm just like, dude, the investing in a brick and mortar thing that has equity and cash flows is not risky. Things will break, yes, but it's riskier to me to not do anything to protect my financial future. So
I got hired in 2010, and it was so funny because you're so elated. I'm at my first spot, and I'm like so stoked to be there, and I'm just like soaking it all in. And then same thing, that was during the same time period, right? So my engineer and captain got hired in the 90s when there was a financial crisis, and they were given pink slips. So they started talking about this when I was there, like it was going to happen again. And my eyeballs were like huge. I'm like, wait a minute. I just went through this whole tower, did all this stuff. And I'm like, I'm going to have a career for the next 30 years and I'm going to be fine. And it was a big eye opener. So I agree with you, Mike. I think you can't rely on just one. And then kind of number two, I suggest people go look at their 457 and take a closer look. And a lot of it, what you'll see too, is even if it's a good performing fund, they always start out great. And then you'll notice the return gets less and less and less every year. And a big part of that is because there's management fees, and those management fees are eating away at your return every single year. So 457s are a good tool. But there's other ones out there, and especially for all of us that own businesses, I love. I have a solo 401k, and that thing is like a retirement account on rocket fuel, and I have a self-directed.
Oh, nice.
So if I want to lend Mike or Brian money, I can take my money out of there and lend it to anybody at 10, 12%. And to Brian's point, I know what it's secured by. I know what the return is. I know all of these things. So I think there's less risk than what people think by doing other investments, but we're just all brought up. Most blue collar people, most W-2 employees, you're taught to get a pension or a 401k. You put money in the 401k, and then magically at the end of your career, it's going to pay for enough, and it's not going to. And by the time you're retiring, if you have not realized that, it's too late, because if you're 55, it's not like you can go work another 20 years to make up for your mistakes. So earlier the better. It's just not sexy, especially when you're in the tower. That's the last thing you're thinking of. You're so stoked to be there, and like, I'm just going to sign whatever they ask me to sign because I want to be here. And I did it too. Believe me, I was so happy. I'm like, dude, I'll sign whatever you ask me to sign right here.
Yeah, and then the other issue too is the part that's out of your control is that, I talk to a lot of these guys I've done this in every job I've done, but I go seek out what I call like the elders, the wise men of the tribe, and I want to find out. It could be anything from, how to have a good long marriage while you're working, to finances, to everything. And And we always get into the deferred comp stuff, and one of the guys was like, "Hey, Elon Musk tweeted something yesterday, and my deferred comp went down by $200,000." So like, that's the part that scares me, is a lot of it's out of your control. It's speculation within the market.
First off, good job if you have the ability to let your account take a $200K dip. That means you're doing something right with contributing.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. We got to remember that part. But that's pretty crazy. And then what they don't really talk about is the fact that you are deferring that tax. So when you pull it out later, you're going to be taxed on it. And so I get back to like having multiple exits. So, when I buy properties, I want to make sure that it's in a market that's going to be appreciating, that I could midterm rent it, I could long-term rent it, I could sell it, I could refi it, pull cash out. I have multiple ways to access that. And that's what I call the sleep well at night stuff, where I go to bed and go, okay, as opposed to wake up and go, oh my gosh, it's horrible. We entered a war, which is absolutely devastating. And then that parlayed accounts just to drop overnight, it just these crazy waves. I don't like that stuff. I'm more of just a slow climb uphill guy.
So there's several things I would still love to talk about, but we're coming up on 45 minutes. So what does your real estate investing journey look like moving forward? Are you going to continue to acquire? Are you just going to keep the portfolio you have and basically optimize it? Or what does that plan look like?
Yeah. So it's kind of surprising me once you get a system down and you just figure out what works and you just keep making that system better. How fast you could scale. That first year I bought 1, the next year I bought 2, the next year I bought 4, and like this year we're on track to buy 6 to 8. And I'm playing the long-term game, but we've kind of switched out of turnkey stuff to do more of the BRRRR stuff. We're doing those in the St. Louis market and the Detroit market. I know the Detroit market could scare a lot of people, but I have a really good team down there. And I mean, it was the highest appreciating market in the country last year. And it was in such a horrible place.
Because it was at zero.
But exactly. Yeah, exactly. But so yeah, to answer your question, my goal is to get to 20 properties as fast as I can. Obviously conservatively. And there's a reason that 20 makes sense for me. There's a whole plan behind that, to where I will be able to, every 10 years or so, be able to refinance a couple and pull tax-free money out to be able to live off of. But the one thing that I'd like to talk about real quick, because this comes up a lot, is I love my job. I love being a firefighter. My plan is not to retire early. I know that gets talked about a lot, but for me, my job as a captain is it's a down payment generator. I'm super lendable. So I got hired at 33. So I kind of am playing a little bit of catch up. But this is more of a generational play. We do pretty well as firefighters across the country. And, but I'm also planning for doomsday. I know like there's injuries, there's the what ifs. I'm just trying to better my family's situation, but I'm just going to keep buying as many as possible. And I'm going to do that with the BRRRR strategy for the time being. If things change and I want to get into different things, I love 3-bedroom, 2 bathrooms. They're the most bought, rented, sold in America. It's super easy. And that's what I do. That works for Brian. So that's the plan.
Nice. And one thing you mentioned was you kind of got turned on to some of these markets by being in a mastermind. Are you still in that mastermind? And could you give us like the 3-minute overview of what your experience was in a group like that? Because obviously, if you've listened to more than 1 or 2 episodes, you've heard us mention masterminds. And yeah. I know Tyler and I can speak to the power that they've had for our trajectory. And, it's something that's probably a little bit of a taboo foreign topic within the fire service, but within the real estate investing space or just business space in general, I view it as like the cheat code.
Yeah. I mean, I think I would say they're 100% necessary. I would not advise people to start this journey on their own. I know there's a lot of free information out there, but a lot of people go down, you can go onto YouTube and you could be a land flipper, you could buy RVs, you can go down tons of different rabbit holes, but you're never going to get good at that one thing. And so when I joined the Mastermind, there's probably about 1,000 people in the group, and from people that have zero knowledge to, we're talking the top 1% investors in the country, like people that have hundreds of properties. And so, yeah, there's that analogy of be the dumbest person in the room. And for me, that was me. When I first joined it, I was like, I don't even know what these words mean that you're using. But the weird part that I've realized that's different from most businesses is that in real estate, people want to help each other. They want to connect. Like, you guys are super kind to have me on here, and it's because we're all trying to learn and better, and we're not in competition with each other. But I know that the three of us can make connections and do better. But in the e-bike world, you got guys trying to undersell you and all this stuff. It's a weird thing in real estate. And so when you join that mastermind, like, I reached out to these people, I connected. I encourage you, if you're in one, to be that guy that makes the phone calls and to text people. But the other thing is, if you join a gym and you're paying money, you're going to go because you're going to feel like you're wasting your money if not. So I to this day pay quite a bit for my mastermind that I'm in, and I will continue that, because
if you don't mind me asking, what do you pay? How much did it cost to join?
Well, I'm in two. One costs me $1,000 a month, which is, sounds like a lot, but I have probably, I don't know, 2 or 3x that amount from learning how to do all the BRRRR strategy stuff, literally in my first deal. And the other one I pay $400 for, and they're two different worlds. Like, one, we're learning about private money, about how to raise private money, how to do flips, how to do BRRRRs. The other one is there's just different topics, really. But probably the most important thing that I've paid for is the connections. And so I would honestly, I know you guys have talked a lot about doing it. I would highly encourage everyone listening to this, find your people, find your tribe, but be careful, because there's a lot of people out there.
Lots of douchebags.
Exactly. And I'm not going to say their names because I don't believe in, but we all know who they are. And it's if there's a guy next to a jet, then don't do it. That's what I'm saying. Find the people that you can relate to, that you can actually make a phone call to, that are going to give you their time on a Friday, like you two are doing to me. That's the value.
That's what I always tell people. Like, hey man, Grant Cardone, take his advice. He's got a jet, Rolls Royce, and a helicopter. I drive an F-150. So just watch where you get face from.
But it's the millionaire next door thing. Like, you want to find the people that we're not doing this to be flashy. We're doing this to help each other out and, help our families out and stuff. So
I always
join one for sure.
I always joke, like, I am totally, like, my uniform as a real estate investor is a hoodie and shorts. And I remember going to a closing, like, because people are always posting the flashy this and the fancy shoes and all this crap that just doesn't mean anything to me. And I remember, like, I went to my biggest settlement. It was my first time having a HUD over $1 million. And I look down and I have sweatpants on and a pair of camo Crocs. And I'm like, dude, I don't know whether I should be proud about this or embarrassed, but you know what? I'm rolling with it.
It takes a real man to wear Crocs, you know that. So
yeah, exactly.
Hell yeah.
Sport mode, Mike.
Hell yeah. Yeah, my youngest son loves that. He's got them in fast mode and 4-wheel drive. So
real quick, and what Brian brought up, and I personally, so I don't know if everybody agrees, but I definitely want to say this because I think it's true. Make sure the mastermind fee kind of hurts a little bit, not to where it's going to put you in a bad spot, but like it's the what is that place called? It's the Planet Fitness model, right? At $50 a month or $90 a month, they're hoping you don't show up because they're going to get as many people in there as possible, and it's not going to impact. It's not going to be super crowded, and it's not going to have a problem. Let's say your gym costs $1,000 a month. You're probably showing up to the gym a little bit more. And the same thing is in real estate. It's like, hey, that $1,000 mastermind, I think that's what we used to pay in fuel, right? It was like 12
plus travel
grand a year, Mike.
I mean, by the time, like within my
plus
quick
travel,
books, it was
which
probably
is a lot.
about a $20,000 to $25,000 a year thing.
Exactly. And that made us focused. And I feel like you said, Brian touched on it. It brought us to a point where you're more accountable and you're around people that are doing deals. And I think that's a good way to delineate it too. You want to be with people who are doing deals, not just checking it out. Oh, it's all good, dude.
Oh,
My
dude, I
dogs
know.
are on. My
Usually
kids are always
Tyler's
on.
like,
It's all
one
good.
landscape guy comes this day.
My landscapers are there.
But no,
Yeah,
100% agree. And it's like, okay, just say 25 grand a year is what I invested. I don't want Bill Allen to come back on and kick my ass in that group. I've made back way more than that. And it would be irresponsible for me to even guesstimate how many times over. But I can tell you that whenever I joined, I was doing like 1 to 2 flips in a year, to the point where it was like, then we were up to like 20. So it's like, it just, like I said, it speeds up your results. So this will come out after I post it, but I'm going to post in the group some feelers, if you will. I'm going to figure out how to do a Facebook poll of where we should investigate. I'm not saying we will, I'm just saying investigate having the first responder summit. Like I was going to put like Nashville for East Coast-ish, Austin, and like Denver.
Nashville shirt on. It's meant to be. This is Nashville right here. Lucky bastard.
It's pretty cool. Like that's a cool city for sure. But I was thinking like an East Coast option, a West Coast-ish option, and a center, so that's why I figured like Nashville, Austin, Denver, or something like that. So I'll put it in the group. This will come out after that. But if you haven't responded to that post yet, make sure you do it when you listen to this.
Yeah, I'm flying out to St. Louis to meet up with some investors in next month, and we're getting a box for the Cardinals game. But like that stuff, it's so important because you could spend as much time talking to people online like this, but when you get in that room with those people, it's like we pay so much to go to college and go to fire academies and better yourself and to have a degree that I've never even used from Santa Barbara. And like, why is that okay? But we're not willing to pay $500 a month to like launch your trajectory of investing. And if you're serious about it, you need to do it. That's like point blank.
Once you have a box at a sporting event, it's very difficult to go to a non-boxed game. So shout out to Ian Horowitz and John Farling, who run a group called LFG. We did 2 separate times. I've been to an event with them where like the one time we had a private box at a Capitals game, and there's just like 25 dudes. You got your own bar, you got your own food, you have your own wait staff, like comfy chairs, bathroom, the whole nine. And that's cool. But what was really cool was we were sitting there having conversations like this while the game's going on, and you're just networking, like to the point where now, like if I have a storage question, I can text a guy that runs 100,000 square feet or 1 million square feet worth of storage facility because we had a conversation and a connection, all because, I spent $2,000 to go to the event that then they put it towards that, to like, it just builds. And that's like the whole thing about a network, man. It's like, it's hard to sit there and calculate exactly how many dividends that has paid, but it's paid a lot. I can tell you that. Let's put it that way.
I have like a secret little black book of people from realtors to lenders to private investors to, I mean, you name it. Like that little vault of people is worth so much money. And I've saved just in one phone call. Hey, how do I get a dog on a lease? I mean, like stuff you don't want to spend hours figuring out. Here's the contract for it. Boom. So
exactly. So Tyler, I don't know if you had anything else, but I want to make sure we hit on that. But Brian, we got a couple minutes left. Is there anything we haven't hit on that you want to talk about quickly, or is there?
No, I mean, I guess the way I would end it would be, we're speaking to people who put a lot of time into being firefighters, cops, sheriffs, military. Like this group is full of a bunch of amazing people. I encourage you all, if you haven't started anything, to take action. Like just take action. You're going to figure it out. You have a bunch of good people around you. I'm super grateful for Tyler, Mike, and Aaron who put this group together. Use that as a resource. It'll blow your mind, like just by using that. So thank you guys for putting this group together, number one. And I know you guys realize the value, but I'm glad I found it, and I wish I would have found it sooner, but I hope to be a good part of this community, and I hope I can give back in some way. But yeah, thanks for having me on. And everyone, you guys are crushing it. So, if anyone has any questions about any of the stuff I talked to about, just reach out. I'm like, my wife won't talk to me about it because she thinks it's super boring. So I need someone to talk to about it. So if anyone's interested, I love to connect. And yeah.
How should they reach out to you? What's your social media stuff? How do you prefer people to contact you?
I'm on MySpace. No, I'm just kidding. I'm on Instagram. It's Mr._Brian_Waters. And then I have a website called www.code3invest.com. And that's the number 3. Has some information on there. I'll go on a limb here, but I'm super transparent guy, so I'll just throw out my phone number too. Are you guys cool with that? And they can text me if they have any questions. I don't know.
I can't be held responsible for what they say.
Yeah, please. I know this is going to open up some photos being sent to me, but
I was just going to say, watch out for certain types of pics coming through.
That's probably that. Aaron's not here. That's probably what he's going to be doing. So 714-655-4141. Love to talk about it. I'll probably learn a lot from all of you too. So
absolutely.
You guys, thanks again. This was an honor. So thank you.
Awesome, man. Thanks for joining us. Greatly appreciate it.
Yeah, you bet.
All right, everybody. Well, with that, we are done with Brian Waters. Thank you. And then we will catch you on the next one.